This whistleblower is hated by the tyrants. He was once jailed, exiled, and now he is freed. Julian Assange has been persecuted by Jesuits, by the politicians in America, both on the left and on the right, Democrats and Republicans. And the great question is, who is next? Candidly, I will speak emphatically, you are next. I am next. If you knew that to live present truth as brought to view in the Bible, and that would bring persecution to you and your family, would you still be obedient to Christ's words? If you knew that to present truth would lead to persecution, would you still present the truth? Or would you compromise? Would you be indifferent? Would you be neutral? And those who present the gospel must exalt Christ, his love, redemption, salvation, his law. They must present the everlasting gospel of those three angels' messages brought to view in Revelation 14. But it is going to bring persecution. Would you still lovingly obey? Would you still present the present truth? Let's get right into it. Greetings, salutations to Safe to Serve International and first-time viewers. Welcome to this midday power surge, your spiritual oasis on this pilgrim journey. I'm your host, Andrew Henriquez. As I sit, as I speak, as you watch, as you listen, America is transitioning, not into anything good, a transformation to a system of tyranny, fulfilling Revelation 13, verse 11 and verse 12. And today I want to emphasize that transformation from a beast with two horns like a lamb to a beast speaking like a dragon. Civil freedom, religious freedom, the separation of church and state, Protestantism, republicanism, those two horns represent the aforementioned points. But right now, those horns are about to be broken. America will speak as a dragon. And Revelation 12 and verse 17 says clearly, there's war against those who live the truth, against those who present present truth, against those who expose darkness, expose wickedness, spiritual wickedness in high places, political wickedness in high places. And by the way, that's Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12. Exposing spiritual wickedness in high places, exposing, my words, political wickedness in high places. Why do I say that? Because in the last days, church and state will unite. And if you expose the wickedness and tyranny in the political realm, you must also expose the conspiracies in the religious realm. Let me give you an example. Breaking news. What happened to Julian Assange, the whistleblower? Here it is.
Breaking news, CBS News has learned that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is set to plead guilty to a single count of violating the Espionage Act.
So, of course, he pled guilty. And now he will serve no more time in jail, no more time in exile. He is now free. Clip 2. And don't forget that, his pleading guilty.
In the twists and turns of the Julian Assange saga, this may be the most extraordinary yet. According to court records unsealed Monday, Assange is expected to plead guilty, but will serve no time in a U.S. jail or anywhere else. Instead, the 62 months he has spent in a British prison will essentially count as time served for his crime. And
do you see that? Now notice, clip number 3. In 2010, WikiLeaks, that's the arm of Julian Assange, his organization, published conspiracy documents, of course, government conspiracies received from Chelsea Manning.
The WikiLeaks founder has been locked up in a British prison since April 2019 as the U.S. government has sought his extradition to America. In 2010, WikiLeaks published a series of leaks provided by U.S. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning, including diplomatic cables and footage from a U.S. military helicopter allegedly showing the killing of Iraqi civilians in Baghdad.
And of course, the media is actually skewing the information and the leak. He uncovered and released far more than what you just heard. And I'm going to give you not the tip of the iceberg. We are going to get to the actual base of that iceberg. Watch carefully. He actually said, because I believe in freedom, I'm willing to sacrifice my life. And sacrificed, he did. 10 years in exile.
In a 2015 interview, he spoke about the strain his forced exile has had on his family.
In some ways, you must, if you believe in something and you want to see it occur, you have to pay a price.
You have to pay a price. And as a result, as I speak to you today, this is Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. He's now free. Here it is.
And now he's about to taste freedom from exile and prison for the first time in years, no longer on the run from U.S. authorities. Charlie D'Agata, CBS News, London.
Now, to give you the insights, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share reporters from the left and from the right, Democrats and Republicans, those who are on the secular, those who are on the conservative side of the aisle. And they are reporting on this controversy surrounding Julian Assange and actually stating that they stand for what he believes in, freedom of speech and of the press. Here is this reporter from the left, MSNBC.
Sometimes, to defend basic principles like free speech or a free press, you have to defend people you may find distasteful, maybe even people you loathe. And with that in mind, we need to talk about Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. Some of you might not like what I have to say, but hear me out. A British court ruled on Friday that Julian Assange can be extradited to the United States to face charges that could result in decades of jail time, reversing a lower court decision in the long-running case against the embattled WikiLeaks founder. Now, Julian Assange doesn't have many friends here in the US. Pre-2016, the right didn't like him because they saw him as anti-American, an Australian far-leftist leaking US military secrets and undermining our global war on terror. Post-2016, liberals didn't like him because of his role in leaking DNC emails, undermining Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, and helping Donald Trump win.
That's from the left, MSNBC. Here is one from the right, Tucker Carlson, actually stating he's not defending Assange. What he's offending is freedom of speech and of the press. And that is the real issue surrounding Julian Assange, his exile.
No one who works on this show ever imagined we'd be where we are now, which is, in effect, defending Julian Assange. But the truth is, we're not defending Julian Assange. We're defending something that is actually under attack, that is actually precious to every American, and that is going away faster than we ever thought it could, and that's the freedom of speech. He reported things they don't like, they threw him in jail. If it happened to him, why couldn't it happen to you again? Speak slowly so we can understand.
Oh. And notice, he was revealing conspiracies in the political realm. But remember, if you go down the rabbit hole, you will realize that church and state are connected, which I'm going to prove without ambiguity. What they're trying to do is to make sure that all media outlets become the arm of the state, the arm of the church. You cannot present anything publicly that they view as malinformation. In other words, let us destroy independent journalism that exposes the political wickedness in high places. Here is the man from the left.
This is a case that centers on Assange in 2010, long before Clinton v. Trump, obtaining and publishing secret government documents. So it's about the First Amendment. It's about the freedom of the press. It's about the freedom to publish without government interference or censorship. And don't take my word for it. Back in 2013, a former official in the Obama Justice Department admitted that the problem the department has always had in investigating Julian Assange is there is no way to prosecute him for publishing information without the same theory being applied to journalists. Those are the words of Obama's then DOJ spokesman, Matthew Miller.
Do you see it? So what happened to Assange will happen to all journalists. By the way, are we called to publish the truth? That's what it is. We, as Christians, are called to publish truth. We must expose the works of darkness. Clip 2 on that same point.
In 2019, the New York Times editorial board said the Trump administration's indictment of Assange aimed at the heart of the First Amendment. Earlier this year, a coalition of top human rights groups, including Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the ACLU, and Reporters Without Borders, put out an open letter saying the proceedings against Mr. Assange jeopardize journalism that is crucial to democracy.
Do you know how they couched this charge against Assange? They said he violated the Espionage Act, actually calling him a traitor, a spy. This is from the right, and then a second from the left.
Just to be clear, Julian Assange did not hack servers at the U.S. Army, the Pentagon, the DNC. No, he reported on those servers. That's called journalism, which, by the way, real journalism, not much left, it's all under attack. Trust us. So for doing that, for humiliating both our elected leaders and the media class, Julian Assange's life has been destroyed. He's been locked away for almost a decade. This case is not about espionage. He didn't commit espionage. He's not a traitor. He's not American. This case is about criminalizing freedom of speech.
Do you see that? Did you hear that? That was from the right. Here it is now. Same point from the left.
Well, he's a journalist, and they've dressed this up like it's an espionage crime.
Did you hear that? How did they couch and dress this one up? The charge against him?
Well, he's a journalist, and they've dressed this up like it's an espionage crime. It's a free speech issue, and he's a journalist through and through. This has a chilling effect for all journalists worldwide because it takes the whole freedom of speech thing and blows it up. You should be worried about your jobs. You could be extradited for saying the wrong thing by a country or a company. You know, this sets a grisly precedent. This could be the end of free speech as we know it if it doesn't go the right way.
Some people don't see it in the area of religion and presenting truth. The man just said a time is going to come where you are going to be extradited for presenting matters, facts, and truth that governments don't like. Is that in the Bible? Why was Herod called to prosecute Christ? Why was Herod called to prosecute John the Baptist? John the Baptist. Did he preach against church and state union? Did he expose the darkness of Herod, taking to wife Herodias? Church and state union, man and woman, church and state union. What happened in the days of Christ? Go back to your Bible. What happened to John the Baptist? Did they put John in prison? Yes, they did. Was Christ prosecuted? Yes, he was. In John chapter 11, verse 47 through verse 53, they said, if we do not get rid of Christ, then we will lose our nation. Yeah. Lose our stability of government. And that's why they persecuted and crucified Jesus Christ. And Jesus said in John 15:20, what they did to me, they would do to you. My question in my opening soliloquy was, who is next? And frankly, I say, you are next. If you're a Christian, you are next. Am I ready for this? Are you ready for what is coming? Imagine that. We preach against the conspiracies of the church leaders, and we are brought to councils and prosecuted. We expose political tyranny, and we're going to be prosecuted. Do I have the faith to meet what's coming? Do you, is the question. Watch this.
To reiterate, going after the publisher of information that a government deems classified or secret is a pretty illiberal and authoritarian thing to do.
Did you catch that? So the prosecution against Assange is actually showing America is becoming what? Authoritarian. We call that draconian. We call that tyranny, a fulfillment of Revelation 13, verse 11 and verse 12. Then comes verse 15 through verse 17. My friends, wake up.
To reiterate, going after the publisher of information that a government deems classified or secret is a pretty illiberal and authoritarian thing to do. It's wrong when Trump did it, and it's wrong when Biden does it.
And here comes from the right. What is going to unite both the left and the right is going to be to persecute those people who expose their tyranny. Left and right. Watch this, Carlson. If you expose darkness and tyranny in the political realm, you will be frightened to see how left and right unite. And you'll be saying, wait a minute, I thought you two were at odds with each other. Oh yes, but to get rid of you, we have a common enemy. Is that not similar in the Bible? In Luke 23 and verse 12, Herod and Pilate, they were at enmity toward each other, but they became friends to prosecute and crucify Christ. May I give you a second? I'll give you the second after the clip. I want you to hang on to every word. Don't sleep on me.
There may be no issue that unites the establishment wings of both political parties, other than fighting pointless wars, more than this issue. And here it is. Leaking classified information that hurts the permanent political class is a grave threat to national security. It must be stamped out. But leaking classified information that helps the permanent political class is an act of good faith. Son, you're getting a Pulitzer for that.
Is that clear? What will unite them? Just as in the days of Christ, the second example. Do you know that there were at least 3 groups that came together against Christ? Number 2, I'll give it two. The Pharisees and Sadducees. The Pharisees would be labeled on the right, the Sadducees on the left. And they were both against Christ. They came together. Why? Because Jesus was exposing their political darkness, tyranny, and their religious false teachings and policies. Here is Assange. What did he actually expose? Let's move away from the casual surface understanding of this. Headline says New York Times, right? What did Assange, WikiLeaks, expose? It says, they provide telling glimpse, this is WikiLeaks, provide telling glimpse of how American diplomats often rely on the Roman Catholic Church's worldwide network of prelates for intelligence. The man was exposing how there's a union between Popery, the Vatican, and the United States of America. Beloved, and you call him a traitor? Wait a minute. Why was America founded? I'll wait on you. What were they running from? They were running from Jesuit tyranny in the old world, papal tyranny in the old world, where the Catholic Church controlled the kings of Europe and silenced dissenters and prosecuted actual Protestant reformers. Imagine in the 1600s, the Puritans and the pilgrims began to unite with the Jesuits in the old world, talking about intelligence. Those Americans would have been hung. Those Americans would have been put on the guillotine block. Those Americans would have been burnt at the stake. Yes, they would have been labeled as traitors and overthrown. Do you realize a change has come? But the change is not with the Jesuits. The change is with those here in America. That's the change. Are we together so far? Church and state union. Are we called to expose church and state union? Did Christ do it? Yes, he did. Did John the Baptist do it? Yes, he did. Some people said, don't talk about politics. May I ask you a question? Does the mark of the beast has anything to do with politics? Yes. Is the mark of the beast both a law that joins church and state together? Yes. How will it be done? Through politics. Church influencing the state. Are we ready for what's coming? We are reading of a fate in the prosecution of Assange. This is what was said when Carson interviewed Vladimir of Russia, Putin. And what was stated? The CIA runs America.
So twice you've described U.S. presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that's not run by the people who are elected in your telling.
Именно так.
That's right. That's right. In the end, they just told us to get lost. I'm not going to tell you the details because I think it's incorrect. After all, it was confidential conversation.
Clip 2, stay right there.
We waited and waited for some response. There was no reply. I said to the FSB director, write to the CIA, what is the result of the conversation with President? He wrote once, twice, and then we got a reply. We have the answer in the archive. The CIA replied, we have been working with the opposition in Russia. We believe that this is the right thing to do, and we will keep on doing it.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous. Well, okay. We realized that it was out of the question.
Forces in opposition to you. So you're saying the CIA is trying to overthrow your government.
Friends, to make sure you see the connection, what did Assange expose? Intelligence. What is a CIA? An intelligence agency. Dots are connected. And Assange, WikiLeaks, exposed American leaders linking up with who? The Roman Catholic leaders. Is the CIA linked to the Vatican? The Jesuits? That's where we're going. What's the connections? Here it is, friends. CIA, Catholic Intelligence Agency. That's what it stands for. That's what the colloquial understanding is. Of course, it's Central Intelligence Agency, but its nicknames are Catholic Intelligence Agency, Catholics in Action. I wonder why. Why would they give it that nickname? Take a look at this. Notice, friends, this cannot be refuted. This is the former president, Reagan, uniting with the Pope of Rome and using the CIA to overthrow communism. Nobody can refute that. That's Time Magazine. Time Magazine published that. So don't argue with me. Go argue with Time Magazine. Take a look at this now. How could this be possible? This is the CIA using, watch carefully, interrogation techniques. Yes, terrorizing individuals, waterboarding, and they receive that technique from the Spanish Inquisition. Friends, I must break this down for you. Do you know when the Spanish Inquisition was actually implemented? It was implemented in the year 1478. I did not say 2014. 1478. This was in the year, let me see here, preacher, 2016. So whose archive has these techniques? The Spanish Inquisition is linked to the Vatican. Don't take my words for it. Here it is from John Paul II. The same John Paul with Reagan that used the CIA to overthrow communism, the USSR, is the same John Paul who's actually apologizing that we were a part of the Inquisition in the old world for the past 2,000 years. Whose resume has these techniques? Whose? Whose? It's similar to having a cookbook. And in that cookbook, you have recipes. And the recipes have directions and instructions. Yes. So they have in the Vatican their archive, their so-called recipes of how to destroy dissenters. Take a look at this. This video actually put the words in picture.
Reverend Eddie Hyatt, author of Pilgrims and Patriots.
Church and state was merged together, and the church used the power of the state to enforce its doctrines and practices.
He says certain governments used deadly force against dissenters who wanted to worship in their own way.
Those people were persecuted, burned at the stake. Some had their tongues cut out. The founders did not want that kind of Christianity.
And even though they apologize, the Bible says they would not change. Take a look at this. This is the Inquisition, confirmed a second time by the Pope of Rome, the present Pope actually. And that board is still intact. It's called today the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And that was the actual board in past times that silenced independent journalism. One such person was Martin Luther. There it is. What happened to Luther? Did they strip away his rights? Freedom of speech and of the press. Why? Because Luther was exposing the tyranny in the church, the tyranny in the states that were controlled by the Roman Catholic Church. And what happened? They burnt Luther's books. What happened to Assange? You're seeing history is being repeated. So who is next? Luther, who is next? Julian Assange, who is next? It's God's faithful people. And that's how I know that some of these independent journalists, as they begin to see the draconian policies of church and state union, and we begin to connect the dots for them, that's how many of them will join with us to complete the work of Christ in the last days. That's what they need to see. That's why this presentation is so important. There it is. They want all media platforms to become the arm of the state, the arm of the church, silencing freedom of speech and the press. That's the Black Pope on the right. That's it. And the present Jesuit Pope. Take a look at this. There are 16 intelligence agencies in America. I want to focus on one, not the CIA now, but the NSA. Look at what this says here, friends. Look at the actual logo of the NSA. Remember now, it is labeled a United States intelligence agency. Look at the logo on the left of your screen. Where did they get that from? They received that from the Roman Catholic Church. What? This is what Julian Assange was exposing. Now, did he know exactly everything he was unearthing and uncovering? Possibly not. But he was on the trail. He was down deep in the rabbit hole, throwing out stuff. And they said, we need to shut this guy down and make a living example of him. Imagine in the founding of America, we had an organization and we chose a logo. We chose a mascot that had everything to do with the tyrants we were running from. That would never had happened. You see my point? Nobody does that. Unless you had the Stockholm Syndrome, uniting with your abuser. Do we have Jesuit plans in America? Do we have some inside traitors? Do we have a Trojan horse movement in America's highest levels of government and the church? Who came up with that logo? Look at the comparison now. Logo on the left. St. Peter Apostle came from the Roman Catholic Church to loose and to bind. And remember, what does the Pope say? The Pope says, I am the successor of Peter. From Matthew 16, the popes, plural, believe. When Christ said to Peter, I've given you the key to loose and to bind. That's me, the Pope. You see, it's right there. From the NSA's website. I'm not making this up. Don't argue with me. Look at this now. Look at the comparison right there. The same keys and the talons from so-called Apostle Peter. Look at this now. So what was Assange actually exposing? Look at this. New York Times. This is the Intercept. Let's read the headline and the first paragraph. Snowden. Documents reveal covert surveillance and tactics aimed at WikiLeaks and its supporters. That's Assange and Snowden. Top secret documents from the NSA and its British counterpart reveal for the first time how the governments of the US and the UK targeted WikiLeaks and other activist groups with tactics ranging from covert surveillance to prosecution. NSA, a Vatican-connected organization, intelligence agency. There it is, friends. Not only Assange, but Edward Snowden, a whistleblower, behind the NSA surveillance revelations. Where is Snowden right now? We know where Assange is. He's now free. Snowden, 10 years in exile, 11 years and counting in exile still. What's going to happen to us? And we're told in the book Great Controversy, page 580, the same Roman Catholic Church has her communicants, millions of communicants worldwide. She has her arm of intelligence agencies, Mother Octopus at work. Octopus, 8 tentacles around the whole globe. Look at this right here. You thought this was a joke? This is The Economist. The former papal ambassador tells with pride how the American embassy would send a diplomat each morning to ask him about the war zones, knowing the Pope's men would have been fully briefed by local nuns. That was what the whistleblowers were exposing. Church and state union with conspiracy, tyranny, and draconian policies, treason in high places, murder in high places, destruction of our freedoms in high places, deception and lies being told to the American people. That's what they're exposing. But we were hearing off the limbs of the trees. Yes, the twigs and the leaves, but now we're getting at the root. If it happened to Assange and Snowden, it can happen to us. Not if, since it happened to them, it will happen to us.
No one who works on this show ever imagined we'd be where we are now, which is in effect defending Julian Assange. But the truth is we're not defending Julian Assange. We're defending something that is actually under attack, that is actually precious to every American, and that is going away faster than we ever thought it could, and that's the freedom of speech. He reported things they don't like, they threw him in jail. If it happened to him, why couldn't it happen to you again? Speak slowly so we can understand.
Speak slowly so we can understand. Do we know what's coming for us? The very book that many people say, I don't believe it's inspired. Look at what it says right now. In the book Great Controversy, the chapter entitled The Final Warning, page 606 says, the sins of Babylon, that's for emphasis, Babylon will be laid open. What sins? Watch now, second sentence. The fearful results of enforcing the observances of the church by civil authority. Do you see that, my friends? All will be unmasked. Thousands will now be enlightened. And many are going to realize that behind many, not all, many of the tyrannical policies of the US government were actually coming from the Jesuits and the papal leaders. And what's going to happen next? Watch this now. Modern day Assange. Here it is, friends. The clergy, yes, the politicians will now unite to shut away the light, silence those preachers, take away the press freedoms, social media, stationary media, the traditional media, give them no access. And that's how we're going to be persecuted. Friends, we're told on page 609, many of us find joy in presenting these truths right now. Many of you in the chat find joy in posting and say, yes, we agree with that. Yes, it's the last days. Yes, we must be faithful to God. Yes, we must live the truth. Yes, we must share and present the truth. But we're told, when the storm of opposition and reproach bursts upon us, some, overwhelmed with consternation, will be ready to exclaim, had we foreseen the consequences of our words, we would have held our peace. I wonder what went through the mind of Assange. The man was separated from his wife for over 11 years. Think about that. From 2010, 2015, 2014. He has children. He was separated from his children for years. Livelihood cut off. Friends and family members, no communication. What went through his mind? What went through his mind? No wonder his wife said his health is failing. Mental health is failing. Physical health is failing. Many of us, if we go through one crisis in our lives, we lose appetite. We don't want to wake up in the morning. We don't want to leave our homes. That's one crisis. And many times it's private. What if you undergo and encounter several crises simultaneously with public embarrassment? How would you feel? And as a man, you can't protect your wife because you are locked up. You're in exile. As a man, a husband, a father, you can't protect your children, your young children, when you are called to be their protector, humanly speaking. How would you feel? Would you not give up the fight? Would you not give up? What would you do if you encounter that? Question, what will you do when things are going to be worse than what Assange went through? Imagine when they brought the food to him. What are you eating? You have no appetite. Did he pray? I wonder if he prayed. If he did, were the prayers answered? How would you feel? Lord, I'm praying, but no breakthrough. Lord, I'm praying, but no deliverance. How did John the Baptist feel when he was put in prison? For what purpose? Exposing the darkness in politics and in the church. They imprisoned him. And did he not send men to Christ? Go ask them, why am I still here? And I was living for him. I preached him. I was his forerunner. Why am I still in prison? Because of him. Why am I in prison? Because I'm preaching what he wrote. Why am I in prison still? Should I look for another? Is he the one? or should I look for another? John the Baptist felt deceived. He felt like giving up. He was depressed. Make no mistake about it. For the truth's sake, he was the forerunner of the first advent of Christ. What's going to happen to those who are called to be the forerunner of the second advent of Christ? That's why this is so important. Have you prayed and no breakthrough? Have you been depressed? For the truth's sake now. And what did Christ say in response? Go tell John, if I wanted to deliver him, I could, because now I have restored sight to the blind. The sick are healed. The lame can walk. Demons are cast out. So the mere fact you're still in exile, the mere fact you're still in prison, the mere fact you are behind bars, it's because I know my will be fulfilled. I know you have strength to endure, or else I wouldn't allow you to undergo this. 1 Corinthians 10:13. He will never give you more than what you can bear, but make a way to escape. You can bear it. And Christ said in closing to John the Baptist through his envoy, go tell John, be not offended. Be not offended. And the thoughts in my mind are Matthew 16, verse 23, when Christ said, I'm going to Jerusalem for the truth's sake. I'm going to be captured, killed by church and state union. They want to get rid of me. I'm a thorn in their flesh. And Peter said, not so, Lord. No, that mustn't happen to us because we are following the God of heaven. And Christ said, get thee behind me, Satan. I'm going to come back to Peter. By and by, then Christ said, watch, if any man will come after me, come after me. Context, what I'm going through, you will go through. Let him deny himself. Take up the cross of self-denial daily and follow me. And then Christ says, watch now, if any man seeks to save his life, he will lose it. But if you lose it for my sake, for living the truth, if you lose it for presenting truth, you shall find it, you shall gain it. If I told you, all of you who are alive right now, safe to serve local, safe to serve international, first-time viewers, the rest of you, if I told you to live this truth and to present all the truth, exposing darkness in politics, religion, presenting Christ's truth, his law, and repentance and reforms, that you'll be persecuted. You'll be on the run for Christ. On the run. You'll be separated from your family, from your livelihood. You may very lose all. Would you still live the truth? Would you still present the truth? It's happy-go-lucky now. Would you still live the truth? When that fire is turned up, 2 times hotter, 3 times hotter, 4 times hotter, 7 times hotter, would you still be faithful to God? In the last scene in the book of John, Christ said to Peter, lovest thou me more than these? Lord, thou knowest I love thee, because Peter had denied Christ 3 times when he was in the face of persecution. Church and state, he denied Christ thrice. Listen to this now. When Christ is going to reinstate him, do you love me? Lovest thou me, Peter? 3 times. Long story, cut short. And then Christ said to him, Peter, when you're young, you have liberty. But a time is going to come, Peter, you'll be captured and you are going to be killed. But Peter, follow thou me. Mercy. What? So Christ told Peter what his end would be for living and presenting the truth. And yet he said, Peter, still follow thou me. And Peter did. But before that, Peter began to look around. Lord, since you know prophecy, what about John? And Christ put Peter in his place. Mind your own business. Don't focus on John. You follow me. And we're told how Peter died. They put Peter on a cross, upright. And the history says, Peter said, no, I'm not worthy to be crucified like my Savior. And what happened? They turned him upside down. That's how the record said Peter died. And he did not recant. Here's my point as I close now. Are you going to recant? Are you going to recant? In the book Great Controversy, don't hurry me, because this is the most important point. The news media can talk about Assange and Snowden, free, jailed, now freed. What is that for the Christian? On the surface, it's politics. What about the Christian's freedom and what's coming? Will you recant if you realize, since they could not get him legally, Assange, let him plead guilty. And he pled guilty, and now he's a free man. That is what Rome, Jesuits, and Popery has done for decades, centuries. They went to those reformers and said, will you recant? Recant! Recant. Here is Martin Luther, page 146, paragraph 1. Luther, they said, will you recant? Luther, remember, they burnt his books, right? Will you recant? Hear what Luther said, long story cut short. It's not for me to decide whether my life or my death will contribute most to the salvation of all, the freedom of all Christians, the freedom of all civil leaders in the old world. You may expect just see him standing before church power and state power in the courts. See him standing in the courts. You may expect everything from me except flight, except recantation. And the last 7 words, fly I cannot, and still less retract. I will not retract. I will not recant. And if you were watching a Hollywood blockbuster, people being persecuted, I bring you now to a man by the name of John Wycliffe, who is labeled the morning star of the Protestant Reformation. Page 87, John Wycliffe chapter, paragraph 3. Cut this short. Hear what he says right here. He's on his deathbed, and the papists realized they couldn't kill him publicly and shame him. Listen to this now. They sent their church leaders and politicians now to the dying bed of John Wycliffe. Quote, you have death on your lips, they said to John Wycliffe. Be touched by your faults and retract in our presence all that you have said to our injury. What have they blamed Assange for? You have injured America and even our allies. Listen to this. The reformer listened in silence. Then he bade his attendant, Jared, Richard, Caesar, Carlos, he begged his attendant, Hillary, he begged his attendant, raise me up in my bed, please. And they did so. Watch this now. And gazing steadily upon them, as they stood waiting for his recantation, he said, in the firm, strong voice, which had so often caused them to tremble, quote, I shall not die, but live. He was quoting the Psalms. I shall not die, but live, and again declare the evil deeds of you friars. papists, end quote. Astonished and abashed, the monks hurried from his room. One last one I'm going to give you. This is a man by the name of Jerome. He was a contemporary, a friend in ministry with John Huss. John Huss, will you recant? John Huss. And John Huss said no. And they put John Huss on a pole, put faggots under his feet, and said one more time, church leaders, state leaders, will you recant? And John Huss said no. And as they lit the faggots under his feet, John Huss did not take a plea deal. They lit the faggot under his feet. And oh, my friends, the man began to sing a song of Zion. Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. And as the fires cracked his skin, charred his flesh, burnt his bones, from toes to ankles, ankles to knee, knee to hip, hip to belly, belly to shoulders, shoulders to neck, neck to head. He died with those words, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. The men all around were gloating at the stench of the burning flesh. However, there was an unseen agent. The Holy Spirit was present. Christ took note, and that man's burnt body was as a sweet smelling incense to the nostrils of Jesus. And at the resurrection of the just, here comes John Huss. And at the resurrection of damnation, here comes all those men that murdered John Huss. And Jerome saw what happened to John Huss. Jerome took a plea deal, retracted, recanted, and they threw him in a dungeon. You would think the Jesuits of Rome would say, okay, since you retracted and recanted, we will spare you and not throw you in a dungeon. No, they threw him in a dungeon. And for almost 1 year, he had no food. And the little food they gave him, as he defecated excrement from his anus on the floor, as he urinated right there in his cell, imagine smelling that the first day, smelling death and putrefied waste for 2 days, for 3 days. That was his home for standing for the truth. That was his bed for presenting the tyranny in the church and state. And you're telling me you're ready for this? You're telling me, you who don't pray 3 times a day, you're telling me you are ready for what's coming? All that shall live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. 2 Timothy 2:13, 3:13. Are you ready for what's coming? Verse 12, verse 13. Are you ready for what's coming? And then they said, we want to make this man a public sign of humiliation. They brought him now from his dungeon, Jerome. And he said, I want a hearing. I now retract my recantation. Yes. And he began to speak, and tears are running down the pale face. Tears are dripping on his chest, not knowing if he had a shirt. Filthy garments. Emaciated body. Skin hanging off the bones as if it's a shirt unbuttoned. A shirt unbuttoned. That's it. And he said, I now uphold the truth I have preached, the truth from John Huss, the truth from John Wycliffe, and so on, the truth from the Bible. Darkness in church power, darkness in state power. I stand firm, no recantation. And what happened to Jerome? He died a martyr for the faith. It's going to be worse in the last days. Here's my point. The faith that we are going to need then, we do not now have. This is why faith is mentioned twice in Revelation 13 and 14. In chapter 13 and verse 10, as soon as it mentions the crisis, the next phrase in verse 10 says, here is the faith and patience of the saints. Then the next chapter, chapter 14, as soon as it mentioned the coming crisis, verse 9, verse 10, then verse 12, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Lord, increase my faith. Luke 17:1 and verse 5 should be our prayer. Lord, increase my faith. Remember, the faith we're going to need tomorrow, we do not now have. But the Lord's Prayer is, give us this day our daily bread. Give us when? This day, the bread for today. Bread is strength. One of my favorite scriptures is Deuteronomy 33, verse 25. As your days, so shall your strength be. Oh, I love it. Stand for the truth. My last statement. In the book Great Controversy, page 609 says, Christ's ambassadors must have nothing to do with consequences. They must present the truth. They must present duty and leave the results with God. Our motto, death before dishonor, or the transgression of God's law, should be the motto of every Christian. Do you know Jesus? That's the question. You're unprepared for what's coming. Know him who's life eternal. By God's grace, I will see you tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern for Midday Power Surge. You know what to do if you were blessed. Freely as you have received, freely you should give. I don't know how much more time we have left on this platform. Let's use it before this door of opportunity closes. Get into the community. Evangelize. The Lord is soon to come, and the protest continues.